Hey everyone, it's Julie Hutchison here from Think, Be, Do Leadership. And it's Monday, it's 1 o'clock, and we're here live. And I'm giggling this morning because of the title of this is Did You Ever Work for an Utter Goat? Because I was inspired last week by Richard Smith. And I was going to keep your name quiet, Richard, but then you shared my post and said who you were. So I think you're pretty fair on. I'm hoping you're here, Richard, with us. And if you're listening live, that's fantastic. Say hello live. And if you're listening on the replay, please put hashtag replay. And what we're talking about today, if you didn't get from the picture, is what happens if your boss is an utter goat. And that's Richard's term, not mine, because when I asked the other day, a question of Richard, I can't even remember what the question was, but his answer was, and I'm going to read it because it was just made me giggle, was, yes, I work for an utter goat who actually thought he had amazing people skills, but was the worst in the world, which is like, oh, super annoying, don't you think? But not only that, he went on to say, and I shan't swear, but he went on to say that when he talked about getting buy-in from staff, making them feel like, they believe that they were part of something. I can't remember the exact words he used about their career. And he said, I don't give a about their careers. Basically, I don't give a about them at all. And so, you know what? I wanted to talk about this because if you're listening now, and there's a fair few of you listening, you must have goats of bosses. So if you're listening now, please comment and say, yes, I did, or you don't have to name who it was. But I had one of these too back in probably about 10 years ago before I owned my own business, and I can be the goat myself now. But if you've ever had a boss that is really not interested in understanding the impact of themselves in the business and the need for creating a relationship with their staff, what you end up with is somebody who is incredibly hard to work for. And if you've ever had that, please, like I said, if you're on the live, just say, yes, I have had that. And if you're on the replay, let me know. Because what happens is if you have a boss that is far more interested in their own ego or their own agenda than in really truly building a really happy business where people are able to do good work, what you get is somebody who will probably be blaming everybody for not performing, and will think it's everybody else's fault, and will probably vocalize that, and if it's not you, then it'll be somebody else, around and about the whole business, telling everybody how crap we all are, because they are not taking responsibility for their impact on us in the business. And what happens is exactly what Richard was talking about last week. We call them an old goat because we hate them, because we don't want to work for them. And if you've listened to any of my lives before, you'll know that I subscribe to my 3-step, my 3-point leadership, which is people either can't do, or they won't do, or they just don't do. Okay, can't do is because they don't have the skill or the direction to do it. Won't do is where we get here. When you get a boss like this, if you've ever had one, you may have felt like this, but if you ever have had that experience, it might not be that you can't do the job, but somehow you won't do that job, and you don't do that job because you're not feeling confident, or you're not feeling trusted, or you feel like you're going to get stabbed in the back if you dare stick your head above the parapet. And what that means is that you won't do it. So it's not that you can't, you might have the skill to do it, but you won't do it for that person. So what that person doesn't realize is that actually they're sabotaging their own success by being a goat, let's say, and they're sabotaging it because we don't want to work for that person. But not only do we not want to, that can't do actually comes into play, because if you don't feel comfortable and trusted by that person, or you don't trust that person not to stab you in the back, then actually you're not going to be able to put your best work in, because you're not going to be feeling free enough to make those good decisions that they want you to make. And you're going to probably fail more. You're probably going to step into something you didn't want to step into because you're so nervous of what that person's going to say. And so this person is pure toxicity for the team and the performance of people, yet has generally no understanding that actually they've kind of designed it in this way. Now, if you've ever been there, please let me know. I've been there. I had a boss and I'm not going to name names because I'm on a live, she might get upset. And looking back, I think maybe I could have done something about it as well. But I had a boss when I was I was an inspector in the police, and I had a boss there, lady boss, who, how would I describe her? She didn't like anything I did, and she didn't like the way I did anything. And I was pretty good at what I did. Let's just say that. And so what happened was, I'm gonna have to. Well, she was called Shirley, and I'm sure she was a lovely person outside of our relationship, and she probably thought I was awful, by the way. So what happened was that she didn't like the way I went about things. So our personalities were incredibly different. She was very direct, much more, what's the word, guarded and shielded and just wanted to talk business than I did. Now, if any of you have seen me before or you see me now, you probably realise that I like to talk, I like to enjoy myself, I like to do the work I want to do, but I like to have people around me. So I'm a people-focused person, and let's just say she wasn't. So what happened was, every time I smiled or had the radio on or talked to somebody, in order to facilitate my buzz around the office and want to do something, what happened was she didn't like it, and she was very toxic towards me. And basically one day I got one of the senior leaders, let's say, came up to me and said, "Oh, so when is it that you're leaving?" And I said, "I didn't know I was leaving." That's how interesting it got. Ever been like that? And so I knew that I did not fit in there, and that boss did not like me. I probably knew that before, but I was trying to hold on, let's just say. But what it taught me was that if your boss doesn't want to, or doesn't realize the impact that they're having on you, doesn't want to realize or doesn't realize, two different things, then you're on a bit of a loser. And so we've got to change that, because the thing about bosses like this, who are generally either completely unaware of the way they're coming across, or don't care about the way they come across. And if you're listening, please tell me, is it unaware or don't care in your situation, or any situation that you may have been in previously, let's say. And so if they don't realize, or they don't want to realize what they're doing to people, they're going to knock their confidence down. They're going to make you completely fed up anyway. You're going to hate working there. And what that means is that you're not going to try. You're not going to want to be there. So you're not going to give your best work. So it kind of proves them right in a way. But what they don't realize is that it's all their fault. So what do? Well, for me, with people like this, who are not necessarily, let's say, people, who are very direct, very perhaps dominant, and perhaps a little bit sometimes narcissistic, who think it's all about them and really don't care what you say or what you do or whether you've got a problem or not. And in fact, I saw there was an HR case, tribunal case that came over the other day, where somebody had been what's the word, treated really badly because she'd got she unfortunately, her father had died, and she'd had to put done CPR on him, and she'd got post-traumatic stress, and the guy said, "Get a grip." And more, obviously there was more to it than that, but anyway, that reminds me of that kind of boss where it couldn't care less. Okay, so if you've got somebody like that and you're like, it doesn't matter what I say, it doesn't seem to make any difference, and the problem is you need to understand whether it is they don't realize or they don't want to realize to start with. Okay, because if they don't realize, then we've got to help them to see it. If they don't want to realize, in other words, couldn't care less, and think they're always right, then then those people have got we've got to deal with them in a different way, because actually the problem is not to tell them what they've done wrong or to show them how bad you feel, because they don't care. The problem is to show them why they even should care in the first place. Okay, so we've got to take a step back and maybe show them, like, what's in it for me to even give her stuff. Yeah. And so it's a different tactic for that second type of person than for somebody who's just purely basically a bit ignorant about what's going on and hasn't seen it. So they didn't mean it, but they haven't seen it or they don't know. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. So if that's the case, you've got to take two different things. So let's have a look. Let's look at the one who doesn't want to realise, the one who really doesn't care and who's not particularly, let's say, people orientated and thinks that they should just, tell you what to do and you should just get on and do it and stop complaining. So that person, the only way I think that you can really help those people, if that's the right phrase, is the what's in it for me, which is the why should I even start to look at this. And the thing is, if they don't even really want to look, the reason is because they don't think there's anything in it for them to bother looking. Why do I need to worry about what people think? I hear it all the time. I probably haven't introduced myself, but so in my business, I help teams and leaders to grow. So what we're doing is helping business owners who have growing teams to grow their leadership skills and the skills of the people that are coming up around them as that business grows. But also I work with mediation and I work in growing team performance, so in conflict and all those things. So what happens is I see this all the time when one person is saying, well, I can even do the body language, well, they should just get on with it then, shouldn't they? Why do I care? Why do I care whether they've had a good weekend or not? I don't understand why I need to even ask them that. Surely work is work. And that's what happens, you see. And the problem is that, 67% of the population are people, whether they're more extrovert with it or whether they're quiet with it, it doesn't really matter. But what it means is that people do care. People do have feelings. And so if you get someone like this, they're like, oh, I don't see why I should care. You should just get on with it, which means that you don't want to be there and they don't get it. Okay. And they think you're all just rubbish. In fact, I heard that the other day. And so what we have to do is we have to have a different conversation. We have to come at this from a higher level of conversation of why should I care? Now, danger point. The first question is do you have to work for this person? Because if they really are to that point where they don't care what you think, and they don't think that they should care, then my first view question is like, would you really want to work with them anyway? I vowed never to work with somebody like that ever again, which is why I have my own business. But sometimes we don't have a choice in that. So let's just think about it. The thing is, the next question will be, are you the right person to have this conversation? And I'm all for tackling problems, but we do need to be a little bit careful because these people are, quite likely to just try and sack you or make your life a complete bloody misery if you're not careful. So when we do this, we have to dance a little bit and we have to play the game a little bit in helping them to see possibly that it was their idea. And I know you might think, oh, that grates on me, but actually we have to play the game alongside, because people like this, when they truly don't realise and they don't think they should, are looking at life from a different perspective. That's all. They're not horrible people necessarily. We might feel like they're horrible people, but they're not. It's just that they're like, well, black and white, this is what we do. We get on with our stuff. So they're very, very task driven. Okay. The other thing, though, is that people can be potentially very, what's the word? No, that's not my word. Closed to criticism. They don't like being criticised. They don't like being undermined, and they would see your comments potentially as an affront to their ego or their authority or something like that. So we do need to be careful, and sometimes it's better to make it sound like it's their idea. So the question is how do we get them to realise? And I think it's a higher level conversation. And what I mean by that is if you try and tackle the individual situation that you're at, you ain't going to win, because they're probably going to say, well, I don't care, just get on with it, or something like that. So we need to look at what happens generally at what I call chunked up level. So for example, if you were to say to somebody, I'm curious, it's a great phrase, by the way, remember that phrase, I'm curious, with this team, everybody seems to be a bit upset at the moment, for example, and I'm not sure why. Why do you think it is? Now, that I'm curious is what we call a bit of what I call a little bit of a softener, really, because what we're saying is, I'm interested in what you've got to say, or I'm interested in your opinion. So what you're not doing is saying, when you walk into the room, Bob, everybody wants to run out. You're a complete mood hoover and we hate you. What you're not saying it in a threatening way or in a criticizing way. You're saying it from a point of curiosity, and you're asking them to think about what it means. Now, that isn't going to happen. No, happen. It isn't going to make a difference straight away, because it may take a few of these, more than one at least, to get them to actually recognize that that is something they need to answer. And what you're doing is helping them to be curious themselves and to start to see that there's something in it for them. So, for example, if you were to say to them, well, I know you don't really care about, or you're not bothered about, I don't know what we're going to think about, extending lunch breaks, let's say, or, worrying about what people have got a problem with, how they feel about COVID, for example. You might say, well, I just need to get on with it. So you might say that, but equally you can say, what, well, one of the things I'm curious about is, what difference do you think it would make if people felt better? I know that doesn't matter to you, but how do you think they might feel if they were able to feel more confident, that they've had some extra time off or something like that? And what I'm trying to get to is that you're helping that person to see things differently. What you're not doing is picking the specific instant of like, oh, I don't like it when you said to us we all did X, Y, and Z. You're looking at it from sort of like, as if you're watching yourselves TV. So, when that happened, I'm curious, what do you think we could have done differently? Or how do you think we could have got people to work differently? And that's a really good way of helping somebody who doesn't like criticism, which is probably these people, to start to notice the impact that something will have, and to notice the what's in it for me. So I think using phrases like that, I'm curious, but also is really understanding that we have to have a conversation at a different level. We have to not worry about the individual battle. We have to talk about a bigger thing. So we have to say, generally, I'm noticing that, people seem to be really upset in the office. I'm curious, why do you think that is? So can you see we're not specific? And if we catch that person's attention, that they can then start to realize and think it's interesting or useful to be interesting, that's when you can have the conversation about the specific individual circumstances. For example, you might say, do you know what? I'm noticing that, we're getting quite a lot of people off sick at the moment. Oh, yeah, bloody hell, we are really getting a load of people off sick, lazy, blah, 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 or whatever. Yeah. Why do you think that is at the moment? Well, I don't know. Well, I'm curious, because what I've noticed is that people seem to be, really upset at the minute. Oh, yeah, well, they shouldn't be. No, I get that. So, what do you think we could do differently? Why do you think they might be experiencing that? And I know that you're not that kind of person, Bob, but it seems to be making a difference, don't you think? So can you see that I'm asking questions of that person, but I'm saying I'm curious, I'm using a generalized sort of approach. And then when that person is interested, and when that person shows some glimmer of wanting to realize, that's when you can come in and say, yeah, well, give me an example. Okay, well, for example, Betty, seems to be like super, super upset about it. And I'm just wondering, would it make it more, now this is where we go, would you think we would be more productive if we could get Betty to be happier? I know you don't seem to think that it really matters about how she feels, but it does seem to be that she works harder if she's happy. So we're taking it away from personal attack on this person, because if you criticize, then they are not going to be listening. Okay, I'm waffling along now. We've been on for far too long. This is stuff that I love to talk about, as you can probably tell. And the thing is, if you can help this person to want to understand this a little bit better, you're halfway there. Okay, so the ones that don't realize, that's easy, by the way, because that person, if they don't realize, because they're not that kind of person, but if you tell them, you can use what I call a bin model, which is behavior impact need, that's much easier, because the minute you tell them, then they're going to know, and then they're going to be like, oh wow, I never realized I had that impact on you. So that's a different kind of person. Yeah, they're the person who would be open to listening. So the first person wasn't open to listening. You don't want to go down criticizing. You want to keep up, chunk up, and to use phrases like, I'm curious. Okay, now with this second person who doesn't realize, then you can get a bit more direct, and you would use this technique with the other chap or chapess once they've started to realize that they should be listening. Okay, and that is the bin model, which is behavior impact need. So when you shouted at everybody, for example, at the lunch break, the impact was that all of them come back looking like, you know, a wet weekend, and really didn't want to work, and they were so unproductive that day because of how you'd spoken to them. And what they need, behavior impact need, what they need is to at least feel like they're wanted, and feel like you're not just treating them like a piece of dirt. So, you know, do you think maybe we should be a little bit careful about what we say? Now, that behavior impact need is really specific. It's like, this is the behavior, this was the impact, and perhaps this is where we need to be instead. Okay, and if you use that on somebody who just doesn't realize, they're going to start to understand what you're talking about. Okay, now, like I said at first, if you haven't listened all the way along, remember a couple of things. Does depend on who you are and where you are in position in this in the business, and how brave you are. Let's say it does depend on when you say this and how you say it. You've got to go in at the right point, and you've got to come in from the right perspective. And using that "I'm curious" phrase is really useful. Okay, and you always have the option of, well, we may say not everybody has the option of not working for that person if they're one of those ones who doesn't want to realize. Yeah, if they really are, like Richard said at the start, a goat to work for, is there a way of just not working for them? That's what I say. But so in summary, the person who doesn't realize, we've got to help them to realize by utilizing, you know, what's in it for me? Why should I even give a damn? And the person who realizing, without bursting their bubble, is to use behavior impact need bin to help them to see the impact they're having. And once you do that, then that person's much more likely to want to change, because they'll see the outcomes that they can get. And that's the other thing, all the way along, what's in it for me? Why should I care? Yeah, because they don't necessarily. Okay, if you have found that useful, well, that would be good if you had found it useful, because we've been talking for 22 minutes. And you're still here. I can see some of you still here, but you're very quiet. If you found that useful and you would like to know more, then I've got a recording of a lovely conflict training that I did, that if you would like it, you'd be more than happy. You'd have to message me and say conflict, and I will be happy to send that out to you, because it's got some of these techniques in it that you can use. But if you did find this useful, please share it. And if you want to find out more about how you can either work with people who are like this, or if you're like this and you're listening to this and you don't want to be, because you're one of the first ones, you don't realize or you just know that you need to up the game that you're playing as a leader, then give me a shout. And our Leaders Launchpad is fantastic for that, because it's a group program, and it means that we work with our peers to grow our skills so that we can grow our team, so that we can grow our business. And if you'd like to find out more about that, then do give me a shout, because I'd be very happy to tell you all about how you can join the next cohort. So thank you so much for your attention, and apologies for the F word in the middle. Well, I didn't actually use it, but it's in the comments with a couple of stars. Apologies for that. And if you would like to know more, then give me a shout, and we will be able to hook you up with some details. Right, I shall let you all go. Have a wonderful Monday and the rest of the week, and I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully at 1 o'clock again. Okay, bye-bye.